Yes, this ain't Repo. Yes, this is a different game. Yes, there's a bit of gore and blood involved. Just be warned if I didn't mention that or put a text over the beginning of this video. Anyways, hello again. I'm back. I just took a bit of a break and was obsessed with some other stuff like collecting CDs for a while, but I didn't forget about this channel. At least not yet. We'll see. Yeah, what was on my mind recently was even as a kid, this idea of perfect is something that I somewhat reachable as a reaction or response, or even as something with the highest possible quality of being subpar excellent. The idea of true absolute perfection, like God, might be attainable for humans, but this idea of relative perfection involves reaching the highest state for that specific context, such as a perfect game or a perfectly drawn circle. It's something that's stuck with me since moving to the United States, with this idea that I have to be perfect or at least strive to become as close to it as humanly possible. It mainly was involved in becoming a perfectionist in how I want things to be, schoolwork, family, relationships, and such. It messed me up badly trying to reach something that isn't necessarily impossible, but definitely requires perseverance, dedication, effort, and especially compromises. If there even is anything, anyone, or any situation that just so happens to be quote unquote perfect, that I cannot say. But what I am trying to say is the idea of being perfect is on its own imperfect due to many reasons, but the main one I like to think of is it's rarely going to be an ideal that strikes true. Strikes true. There we go. As we are humans and as long as we live, our perspectives and ideas are going to change. Even if we are raised the same, there's going to be some difference, no matter how minute. Your idea of what can be considered perfect is going to differ from what I see it as, and that idea can sometimes be so damaging if being addicted to striving for it. I know from personal experience that this idea of perfection, if looking at it wrong, is more damaging than it is helpful. It can be a good idea to strive for some sort of perfection in your life, but when you start obsessing over it, and I think that it and think that anything can be improved, even if it's already good on its own, uh, that's when it becomes a problem. In elementary, I saw many dedicated and quote unquote promising students that made me feel like a moron, an idiot who needed to work harder than an average A student and become an A plus, even an A plus plus student. Transitioning over to middle school, that didn't work out well, both for me and a couple of those students who I keep in contact with as well. As I got older, I still had that same mindset of striving for perfection, which led me to crashing out over getting either a C or a D in calc at around high school. Cried and felt like it was already over for my life before I even left my parents' house, and started to realize that as work got harder, I needed to be easier on myself. Being an average B, at best A minus student, was okay. And I think that what makes this idea of perfection even worse is that there's programs, tasks, and such that try to focus on that a little too much. Why does it matter that my child is a student in the most activities, the highest classes so far, and has the highest achievements to make them stand out at such an early age where they're barely able to fully comprehend how the world works or even able to drive themselves from point A to point B? I'm not saying to push others to a higher degree of satisfaction, but when you try to push so much into a singular person that you think you're helping them by doing so, that's when I think it gets hurtful. The strive of being perfect contributed to my anxiety and depression to the point where I'd lay in bed and over contemplate if my work was even good, and sometimes redo it too much and hurt myself physically when it wasn't, like a slap or punch to the gut, literally. Over time, I'd become more depressed, give less effort in my classes, and I won't even lie, I rely on others or some other way to finish my work, to do stuff that I didn't even feel motivated to even write a word about, like using Grammarly to help me write my essays or rely on my friend's old code for similar assignments. Perfect comes at a cost, as most things do, and the cost for that is going to be my humanity for me, my sanity, and it has already taken too much of that. Instead of aiming for perfection, be satisfied with what already works, and even more when you did a better job than intended, and praise for that. Stupidity is in our nature, but so is growth and understanding. We evolve and change to try to justify or make something work, and as time goes on, soon if you're facing the same problem that I had, you'll see the fault in trying to pursue something that is so unbelievably difficult to get. There's no need to try to be the best in almost any and every aspect, since you don't want to spend your life fixating on every little thing to try and make it the best that it can possibly be. With that in mind, it is also useful to have some sort of basis of what you consider quote unquote perfect, without the idea of being incredibly flawless and with no fault. Having a certain benchmark, of what you consider to be satisfactory without having to push yourself so much. There's still a need to push yourself, considering that the world is going to need you to put a little bit of elbow grease and roll up your sleeves sometimes. Don't expect to be going for the best when the greatest it can possibly be already works fine. There are many different ways to reach a goal, to satisfy the standards to get a task done, just like coding. There are many forms of answers, methods, functions that can work, with some being arguably better than others. But I can see it as long as you're able to get it done, it's not poorly made, it can be used as an example for others for being great in what it does, you have already achieved something that works perfectly. It's pretty much what was on my mind recently as the past few days I've gone to relax and just think about what exactly made me the way I am. If there's anything else I have to say before I end it, it would be I've recently also found out reading my sort of basis pointer slash script, I speak way too fast and I end up stuttering. I gotta fix that. But that was the half dive episode for today, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.